Hey everybody, welcome. My name is Craig and we're here at Reach and Teach in San Mateo, California. We've got Innosanto Nagara here to talk about his newest book, Oh, the Things We're For. Just a few logistics to get through before we get started. We're asking if you'd like to share your video because later we'll be able to see you guys in the gallery, you folks in the gallery. But if you don't want to share your video, that's fine. It's completely optional. We're going to be recording this session and posting the results on YouTube. Feel free to use the chat room to discuss things with each other and ask questions. We'll also be putting some links there for you to use later on. We have everybody on mute for their audio. When we do the Q&A session, we will invite you to unmute yourself. You'll see a button pop up and have you go ahead and do that. We ask for a certain amount of grace because this is the first time we're doing this, and even if it was the 20th time, there's no way it's going to be perfect, but we'll try our best to make it fun. That's the key. Today, we're really excited to have Innosanto Nagara here, aka Inno. Inno was born in Indonesia, moved to the US to study zoology in 1988, and joined Inkworks Press in 1995. Those of you who don't know about Inkworks Press, basically, if you saw a poster or a flyer or a booklet or anything having to do with activist movements from 1995 until 2000 something, more than likely they were printed at Inkworks Press. And Inno was part of that group. It was a collective, and he helped do a lot of the design of all of those materials. And he started a wonderful company called Design Action Collective in 2002. They are still thriving. And in fact, Inno, through that company, designed our very first product here at Reach and Teach, Civio. He designed the graphics and the cards and the illustrations for the particular cases that were in that game. Inno had an idea after he had a baby boy. He wanted to have an A to Z book that wasn't so boring and silly, so he wrote his own called A is for Activists in 2012, and that book became a bestseller. Started on Kickstarter, then got picked up by a major publisher. Since then, he's done Counting on Community, The Wedding Portrait, My Night at the Planetarium, M is for Movement, and today we're here to talk about his newest book, Oh, the Things We're For. Inno lives with his life partner, Christy, and their avid climber, Kiddo, living in co-housing community in Oakland. So that's our introduction. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing that screen, and we should be able to see Inno at this point. Hi, Inno.
Hi, thank you for having me. You forgot to mention that even that you all played a role in the birth of A is for Activists too. You know, we sat down and talked about ideas around how to make that happen when I was still self-publishing it. So we go way back.
Yeah, and we helped with the Kickstarter, and it's one of the things that we, there's part of me that says, well, we could have published that, but we didn't. And also, our connection with Inno, folks, so that you know, is that after September 11th, a few months after that happened, I got a phone call while I was working from this woman named Christy, and she said, somebody told me that you were Jewish and that you were kind of an activist, and I was wondering, would you come with me and this group of people to Afghanistan? So post-September 11th, and I'm like, Afghanistan, why would I do that? And her answer was, we're having an interfaith peace delegation to bring people from America who were impacted by the September 11th tragedy to Afghanistan to meet with people who were impacted by our response to that terrible tragedy. And Christy led that delegation from Global Exchange that Derek and I went on, and it completely changed our lives. And after that delegation, we ditched our high-tech education business and started Reach and Teach. So the connection with Inno has been long and wonderful. We can blame Inno and Christy, or we can thank Inno and Christy for the wonderful life trajectory that we ended up going. So I put your biography up there. I just talked a little bit about our biography. You came to America to study zoology, and what happened?
Well, so I decided to be a biologist when I was 10 years old, and I followed that path all the way through college. And there is perhaps, for me, that when it's one of the lessons that I talk about with kids a lot is the idea that, you can change your mind. And sometimes life trajectories don't always go the way you plan them to. But basically what happened is I moved to the US. I decided, I did do my zoology degree, but found myself spending more and more of my time involved in activism and doing graphic design type work. That's where I met Christy, doing at an anti-war vigil, the first Gulf War, which is ancient history for usually the kids I'm talking to on these forums, although this group might not be as as young as I'm usually my usual audience. But the it became clear to me. I went to Indonesia in 1990, and it became very clear to me that that I needed to be doing more, and that's how I kind of ended up on the sort of activist graphic design trajectory instead of zoology.
All right. Well, actually, I'm glad that you did. My first career goal was to be a physical therapist, and I got nowhere near that in my life.
Yeah, and actually, I still have a real appreciation for science, and I still try to keep up with stuff and do a lot of reading, more of the pop version of it. I'm just not a practitioner.
So you're more of a believer that these theories are something we should be paying attention
Yes.
to. So let's take that journey, all the activism that you've done, all the causes that you've worked on, and believe me, between Design Action and Inkworks Press and just your own life and Christy's life, you've been involved in so many movements. The beginning of this book, which is wonderful, Oh, the Things We're For, kind of sums up where we're at right now. So I was wondering if you would be willing to go ahead and read from part of the beginning of the book for us. And I might bring up on my screen images from the book while you're reading.
Sure.
All right, let's go.
For those of you who haven't read it yet, it's a very short book, but so is it on the screen already? I can't see.
We're here now. We got it.
All right. So we can flip to page 1.
We're going to try to do that. There we go.
So it starts with, when you go to a march and raise your sign high, you'll make people smile who thought you were shy. You'll make people laugh, and you'll make people wonder, does that kid really know why? Sorry, that was an early version, still stuck in my head. You do know, of course, and that's why you're there. You're there to say no, because you do care. You're there to say stop. What's happening's not fair. We can't keep doing what we're doing the way it's been done. We can't keep using it, moving it, running it, how it's been run. Standing together, that's how change can be won. So yes, you do know what's up and why you are there. But that's not the big question, at least not for me. It's not folks who don't know or just disagree. It's folks who want to be with us, but feel that they simply just can't see. Folks who say, we want to resist, we're on the same page. Our problems are serious, that's easy to see. Destruction must stop, we can't let it be. Stop polluting and poisoning and cheating and stealing. No one likes dictators or violence or kids going hungry. End poverty, stop war. But okay, then what are you for? Oh, what are we for? That is my favorite question. And I'm sure it's yours too, because you pay attention. You have so many answers and so many options and so many solutions that you want to impart. The only hard question is, where does one start?
Where does one start? So much going on out there. Well, you've had a lifetime of activism under your belt. What are some of the positive changes that you have seen? I mean, right now, there are a lot of people that are kind of sad, feeling a little bit hopeless, feeling like we're not getting anywhere, but I think we are. So I'm wondering, what are the positive changes that you've seen through all these years of activism as a result of peacemaking and social justice movements?
Yeah, I mean, I've been very lucky because by doing graphic design for social change type work and now the children's books, it's allowed me to work yeah, in as an ally and in its support of multiple movements. Part of my problem was making a commitment to any one thing that I would get deep with was something that I had a hard time doing. And this way, I was able to work on many different things. So, as you say, like part of what is in this book and in my other books is that I'm able to um, have been privileged to be a part of many movements, some that are not, that are still having, we're still working hard on, and then some things, that you can see successes around. I mean, for me, obviously, the biggest thing is I grew up in Indonesia under a military dictatorship, and that military dictatorship is no more. So I do see how change can happen, and that's part of what some of my like Emma's for Movement, some of my other books, all sort of go off of that theory of change, that sort of understanding that big, large changes on a fundamental level against oppression can happen. It's a question of and it doesn't happen through just one person standing up and saying no and being a hero. It happens through many people across many different types of tactics and sensibilities being coming together, and at some point at the right time, and you don't know when that is, you don't know when the confluence of things really works out, but it is entirely possible for real change to happen on a fundamental level. And I think that's going to be true here as well.
So kind of, what you've been doing through art, through design, you're not focused on one particular issue, but you're providing a tool that people who are passionate about one particular thing can use to bring more people into their movements. I mean, I've read a movement is not the first person, it's not the second person, it's very often the third person. And that third person can be attracted by a work of art, a particularly well-phrased statement, or a piece of music that makes them say, oh, wait, what's that? And then they get attracted and they can do something about the world. And you work with people who are just very laser focused on one particular issue. It is cool that you've been able to help with your work all kinds of people who are laser focused get their messages out there and attract more people.
Yeah, and it's important that the work that I do is driven by their experience, because I think one of the mistakes for a lot of people who are interested in doing graphic design and art for social change is you end up what I refer to as designing in a vacuum, and so it's very easy to sort of, I have my opinions about how things, what should be said, but your sounding board is actually a lot smaller than you realize. And if you've ever actually worked on an issue, you realize that what is really going on versus how you understand things to be going on based on media reports and all that kind of thing is often, most of the time, completely off. And so it's really important that you work with people who are on the ground, and they may not be the best the at what you do if you're doing creative communications type work, and so you have to have confidence in your ability to communicate ideas using the medium that you're working with, and that can actually, because they can also be very insular and they're friends, and they know so they're good at mobilizing their own folks, but they may not be as good at crossing over. Many of them are also very good at that because that's their job as well. But there's these bridges that we serve as, but it's important to actually maintain those bridges and not just go off on your own, because then you start doing weird things.
Right. I mean, from my memory of working with Design Action is that every project for every different group had a different look that matched what that group was trying to do, matched who those people were. It's a little different from the books that you've been doing now. I can look at all of your books and say, hey, that's Inno. That's Inno's style. And that's a different thing from when you're working for other organizations. Sometimes, you work with a design organization, and everything that comes out of that place looks the same.
Yeah.
No matter who they're working with, no matter what message they're trying to communicate, it's, oh yeah, that's so and so design company. That's how they
Right.
do things. You did things completely differently as designers.
Yeah, I mean, we did the book stuff. I think for me is very different than the graphic design that I do for organizations. The graphic design work, I was actually very, we were consciously saying we are not. This is not art. This is not. We're not artists doing our. This is visual communications, and so we actually, that's why we had a whole collective. We have multiple styles available. It's all about being able to find the the right way to communicate visually these ideas rather than any sort of personal expression on the part of the people. We don't put our names on things. This was all conscious to try to tamper down the artist's ego piece of it. With the books, there's a lot more of that is more what like I have to make the decision myself about what I'm putting out there. I do have still a way that I try to make sure that my books are um, there's a feedback loop, that it's not just me reading it to my kid and he likes it, so it must be good. I do send the manuscripts out to families. I do a lot of what I call field testing of the books throughout the whole process. And when it comes to talking about issues, I run those pages by organizations that are doing activist work in those fields to make sure that I'm saying what is useful and that isn't, contrary to what they're trying to do. So there's still some of that, but it's to me it feels very different because it's fundamentally driven by by something that I'm sort of just deciding on my own to do, as opposed to having you come to me and say, we've created this, here's what we need from you. So
Yeah, so I find all of your books to be very positive tools for teaching about peacemaking, inclusion, civil disobedience. We could talk a little bit about the wedding portrait and social justice. Well, let me go ahead and divert to that. The wedding portrait. Tell everybody where you were married and what you were doing when you were getting married.
in the wedding portrait is I use the story of our wedding as a sort of vehicle for being able to share stories around direct action and civil disobedience. We got married and then we took our whole wedding party to the Livermore Labs and got everybody arrested doing direct action civil disobedience in front of Livermore Labs. Um, but I, you know, I, it's interesting because when I do school visits with kids, they always want to know sort of what happened and to me and Christy in this getting arrested thing. But what I hope is that the book is not just that's sort of a vehicle for telling that story, but what the book is about why you have to break the rules when things are bad, and so it's about sort of a history of direct action and civil disobedience and how changes never happen without people not breaking the rules, and so again when it's me there, it becomes about me.
Yeah,
But out in the world, I think the book sort of lives as in a space that's more about the rest of the vignettes in it, I hope.
yeah, and I think for kids, a lot of especially right now, if you watch television, a lot of the messages, law and order, everybody's supposed to obey. I had a Facebook conversation about things that were going on. And one of the people, a very decent person, basically said, no, you always have to do exactly what the police say, always. And I had to push back and say, well, no, sometimes they're wrong. Sometimes you have to disobey when something is unjust. And I didn't get anywhere with that person, but I had a lot of other people that we had a good conversation with. Civil
Yeah,
disobedience sometimes is a tool that you have to use, and it is successful.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Kids, they spend most of their time being in spaces where it's all about the enforcement of the rules and learning how to you know follow the rules. And I see our former principal Moira is actually on this, and and I think that there is a place for that, learning how to operate within our society in a way that is respectful of others' spaces, that it's not all about just, whatever I want to do. But that's why, I sort of title it's like, it's about why sometimes we break the rules.
And you have to be willing to pay the consequences for that. That's the other, part of civil disobedience or saying no to something. You have to know when you're doing that there may be some consequences for you, and you have to be willing to accept those.
Yeah, if there must be, I mean, that's on them, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah, so Pete Seeger was working with a group of kids in a school on the East Coast, and he was doing music lessons with them. And a few of the kids would end up in the hallways singing Pete Seeger songs, and this got some conservative parents very upset. And at a certain point, they called the principal, and the principal got on the loudspeaker system one morning and said, ladies and gentlemen, young people, there will be no more singing in the halls at our school. You may sing in choir, you may sing in this, but there will no singing in the halls." So the kids went off and told Pete, and they wrote a protest song, which dozens and dozens of kids sang in the halls of that school afterwards. And it's on one of his most recent Grammy albums. We're gonna don't tell me no. So in this particular book, what was your goal, if there was a particular goal? What were you trying to achieve with this particular book that came out just now?
So A is for Activists is about the issues. I wrote that because I wanted to have the book that was about sort of the values and issues that our community and family share. And then I wrote Counting on Community because that's sort of more about how we live. You got all the books. I also have them here, I can show them. And then I wrote, My Night in the Planetarium, which is about art and resistance and how, and colonialism and how change can happen over time. And then The Wedding Portrait is about direct action and civil disobedience, and it's sort of about tactics. And then M is for Movement is about sort of how all that can come together, and sort of the big tent idea, and that we don't have to be perfect in order to be able to fight for change. And so all the common thread for me around all those books is that they're about agency, right? They're about the idea that bad things can happen and bad things do happen, and we can't promise that everything will turn out okay. But you have a choice about how you engage in those in the world. And what's interesting is, but there is a real focus on sort of stopping the bad things that have happened and that are happening. And a large part of my sort of personal life work is actually around building the alternatives as well. So it's, I think this is not to say that protesting and stopping things that are bad first and foremost is not just as important or more important. But in order to keep this going for the long haul, we need to have a vision of what we're for. And so what, the things we're for is meant to be where, I mean, exactly what I read in the intro. People will ask, well, then what are you for? And I've worked in the worker co-op world. I've worked in, I live in co-housing. I train and teach at a collectively run dojo. Like everything I do is in my world. I've invested a lot in this and the ideas of sort of alternatives to the system that we have that are viable, that are scalable, that allow people the largest amount of agency as possible within a complex society. And so to me, there's not a shortage of solutions. We have so many things that we talk about when it comes to solutions. And the things we're for was sort of the next logical step, is to talk about, when we do overthrow the government, what is it that we actually want in its place?
What are we going to replace it with? I mean,
Yeah.
There's a great play in Ashland that involved, the right versus the left, and the right side was mothers against.
Mm-hmm.
This is all the stuff we're against. And there wasn't a good message from the other side of, okay, well, here's what the world would look like if we were in charge. Here's what we would do.
Right.
That
Yeah, and it's a bit of a, it's a stereotype and a myth. Like we actually do have no shortage of things that we're for, but uh, perhaps we don't talk about it enough, and that's why I wanted to have this book for the kids.
cool, really cool. So I think what I'd like to do is open it up for questions. And if folks have questions, they can use the little raise hand button on the participants list. And we can invite folks to unmute if they have questions. I don't know if there have been any questions in the chat, Eric, that I want to get to.
I will say that Susan Greger made a comment more than anything else, and I'll read that. Love Inno's sensitivity to communication and working with the groups he is helping. One of the big pitfalls of people who want to help is that they come in with answers without knowing the right questions and not respecting the knowledge of the folks they want to help. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky because, I get checked every day because I live with organizers, and while my particular work is more around the communications piece of it, I know the difference between what I do and what they do.
So are there any questions?
Yeah, if anybody has questions, go ahead and raise
Oh,
your
you can
hand.
just
Or
also,
comments.
you also can
You can
raise
also
your hand.
wave your hand and one of us will see you.
We'll see you.
Don't be shy. I see a hand up, Allison Hanson.
Okay, great.
Do you want to go? He's going to send you an,
Yes.
oh, you're already unmuted. Great, go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to ask you about the age level for your books. I'm a librarian and I wanted to know, one of them looked like a board book, but I'm just curious the general age recommendation.
They follow the age of my kid. So the first two are board books.
Okay.
So I wrote those, with the idea that you read them with little kids. There's been a number of teachers and educators and librarians who've somehow found a way to read those books with bigger kids, and all power to them. I'm amazed at what people can do with these things. But I really did write A's for Activists with a very clear sense that this was something I wanted to read, with my 2-year-old at the time. The So that's A's for Activists counting on community. The My Night in the Planetarium was for first graders,
Okay.
roughly, but I find that one works all the way up to like 3rd grade or 4th grade even sometimes, because but it's a short, and that one's a picture book. It has a story. And then the Wedding Portrait is like 3rd, 4th grade, and then the M is for Movement is early middle grade. So that's, it's highly illustrated, it's very large format, it's for reluctant readers, but it works, 4th, 5th, 6th grade. And then other things are for I struggle with because, just like it's an homage obviously to Oh, the Places We'll Go, and that works with little kids.
Right.
Just if it, and so it always does work on that. But people read that book and give it to people, to kids at all kinds of grad levels, right? And so
Yeah.
it's probably something people don't like. It sounds like I'm just saying it's for everybody, but I really do feel like this new book is one that you can kind of work with quite a broad range of age levels with.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions
Or
or comments?
So one comment from Trish. I read them all.
Hi, Trish.
I read them to all elementary students. And so that's Trish's answer to age appropriateness. Susan has a question. Are children learning the difference between illegal and unethical in schools now? Is there a curriculum for that? There was not back when I was in school.
I mean, I can't speak to curricula around the country, but what I have seen, in Oakland schools that I am, and I do I guess I've done quite a few school visits, a lot of them on the East Coast as well. At least in the classrooms that I'm going into, particularly around the Wedding Portrait, there's the classrooms that I'm going to are places where the kids are encouraged to have these conversations. This is a very biased view, obviously, because it's teachers that invite me into their school classrooms, and there's plenty of teachers who may not be so happy to have me in their classrooms, not because of the teachers, probably more the families. But I would say that, you know, pretty much every classroom you go in, at least around here, and I think in a lot of America, you know, you'll find people talking about Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks and Gandhi and Mandela, you know, and so I think the idea that uh, people break the rules um, in order to make changes, it's there, but I would say that it's probably there's this weird thing where it's all there and yet it's not explicit, and it's somehow whitewashed in a way that makes it seem like like that wasn't a key component to what they were doing. Whereas, and that's kind of what's a little different about the books that I'm writing, which is that once those books come in, suddenly it becomes about the action of the fact that you did break the rules, that there are consequences, that you know, it's not just sort of about being inspiring. And so my that's a long answer to, I don't think that it's what is being taught across America, but I think it's there. The foundations are there, and depending on the classroom, I think it can be taught.
Yeah, I know that here in San Mateo, when the kids at various schools staged a walkout, you know, after George Floyd, it was fascinating to go onto Nextdoor, which can be a fairly toxic social
Yeah,
place.
I had to get off of that.
But to see how many people thought it was a terrible thing for the children to walk out of school. How dare they do that? It's like, no, it's a perfectly wonderful thing, especially with the support of their teachers and their parents, to be able to walk out to make a statement about, you know, change that they want to see happen.
Yeah. I mean, you know, Moira Contreras is on this call, who is a former Oakland principal and amazing principal at my kid's school. And, you know, in that school, they created an environment where these conversations about ethics are central. So it's very possible. And we could bring Moira in if she wants, but no, not to put you on the spot.
Moira, are you willing to join us and talk?
She does have a comment that I did want to read.
Okay.
Thank you for writing this book. It's easier to be against something, but it takes a bigger commitment to be for something and to stay in it and to see it through to a new reality.
No, she's on.
Yeah, Moira right there.
Hi, Moira.
Hi. Yeah, I think the school itself is an example of that, right? It took 20 years of commitment to build it, and really sustained work to create something different. And I think when you have people that are against something, they may not be all for the same thing. So it's hard to build something. And also, I found that people's maybe are not in it for the long run, the long haul, right? So I think I really appreciate this book because it allows for that conversation, right, with kids. Like, so what are you for, and what are you willing to do in order to create a different outcome or a different reality, or how committed are you to this struggle? So thank you, appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, and thank you for creating the school that you did. And that's, you know, that's an example. I think, you know, you had to put, you know, it's a life's work, and that's one school that has been an amazing testament to that. And I think that does exist in different places. People have put that kind of work into it, but I don't think that it's given in terms of the original question around whether ethics are taught in schools in America.
Yeah.
Not a given, not a given. And, you know, it's an amazing thing. I've heard people talk about, you know, concentrating on social emotional learning, concentrating on ethics, concentrating on, you know, treating each other the way we treat each other, and saying, well, we don't have time for that because we got to get our scores up. We have to get our standardized test scores up. And time after time, the proof really is that when you focus on the whole human being, the scores go up. And you're not losing anything by focusing on ethics or taking some time out for mindfulness. Those things all improve everything. So any other questions?
One comment from Karen. At my son's cooperative preschool, we learned not to tell kids a negative like don't run, because the absence of doing something is not a very clear instruction. It's more effective to tell them what you want them to do. Walk, please. It strikes me that there is concrete power in knowing what we are for and being able to provide clear vision.
Yeah, I mean, there is for me, you know, to be, and like Maria was saying, you know, being in it for the long haul requires having a vision of where you're going. You know, there are all these studies about, you know, if you where if you test people on by showing them things that are bad, things that you have nothing, that there's nothing you can do about, some they get into a very depressive state of mind. You know, it leads to depression, and you know, part of the danger for us on the left is that we do see a lot of that. You know, we're trying to not be just distracted by the entertainment industry, and to be able to actually look at the bad things that happen and try to do something about it. But you look at a lot of that, and especially the times that you can't actually do anything about it, that can lead to paralysis. And so I think, you know, balancing it with, you know, where are we going with this? What are the things that we can do? What are the positive visions? I think is important, and especially if we are starting to talk about these things with kids from a very early age, then we're, you know, which we have to with Black Lives Matter, with, you know, kids in cages. You can't not talk to your kids. I mean, I guess you can, depending on who you are, but many people in America cannot not have these conversations with their kids. But if the only conversations we can have with our kids are about the parts that are negative or that are difficult, then that'll, you know, the long-term impact of that, I think it's hard to motivate people around continually facing struggle.
Yeah, and I think we're in a space right now where we were talking before we started the Zoomcast about your wife's work and how many people right now that she's working with are facing eviction, do not have enough money to, can't pay rent, don't have enough food. And so you're dealing with that current, right now, critical crisis issue. And it takes a certain amount away from you being able to work on the long term, which is, you know, fair employment practices so that these folks would have had a fair living wage, decent, you know, treatment at their jobs. So it's a matter of, we have to be focused on the long run while dealing with all the crap that the world is throwing at us right now, this moment. That sometimes can be hard.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'd like to invite you to close us out with the positive, where we're going, and the world that we are working for. So if you would do the last few pages, tell me what page I should get to on my screen share, and I'll do that.
Yeah, we were talking about, let's see. So from where I left off, there's sort of vignettes talking about the different things that we're for, and of which there are no shortage. And then I thought I would take it to this page. I don't know if I'm not seeing myself now, so I'm assuming you can see me.
Okay, I can see you.
Oh, there we go. So if you can get to this spread here. There we go.
All right.
So as you can see, there's much to be done, much to be fixed, and much to be run. But having to do stuff isn't so bad. Let's roll up our sleeves. Let's do something rad. Let's shout out solutions from sea to sea. Let's yell out our favorites. I hope you'll join me. So then I show this page, and you all can shout out the solutions that you're for.
Oh, okay.
Sanctuary, science, diversity, co-housing, clean energy,
Free range kids.
free range kids. So you know, it might already be in here, or you might have to add your own. Kids' rights. To you, these ideas are never a bore. You've already shared many and have many, 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 oh, so many, many more. When you care for the world as much as you do, creating solutions is oh, so you. Of course, not all solutions are the best they can be. And as your principal said, on some things we may disagree. That's not what it actually says, but it all starts with caring and agreeing to sharing, a radical act if we are daring. But this is all stuff that you already know. You're ready to go. You're ready to roar. You're ready to start. You're ready to roar. So off now, let's go. Let us start working. Let us start building the future we're for. The end. And then here, kids can add in, can write in the things that they're for. Make a list.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. And I think we can all, let's look back 30, 40, 50 years, think about what we never dreamed was possible 30, 40, or 50 years ago, and look at the positive things that we have been able to do in those 30, 40, 50 years, with some people laser focused on making those things happen, and other people out there supporting them and joining their movements and providing them with the music or the art or the encouragement. Or, you know, right now we're dealing with COVID, and we've got healthcare workers that are under tremendous stress. There's this wonderful person who also saw that restaurants were going out of business. And she said, wait, these healthcare workers are hungry. These restaurants could feed them. So she started a nonprofit that basically allowed people to provide the meals to those healthcare workers and keep those restaurants open. All we got to do is look at a problem and find a positive solution and go forward and make that happen. And I'm so excited about this book because I think it's going to inspire a lot of kids and a lot of adults to go out, pick something, join a movement that's already out there, and make positive things happen. So I got one more question before we let you go. You're probably already working on the next book. Is there another idea there for what's next that you want to talk about?
The book that I'm working on right now, yeah, books, you know, tend to happen and be created, and then there's this long period before they actually get out in the world. So, but the book I'm working on right now is actually another board book. It's written by my friend Mona Dalmuji, who wrote the book, and so I'm doing the illustrations, but it actually ties in together with my other two books. It's called Together. It's about collective action, but for little kids.
Very awesome. All right, we've got something good to look forward to. So, Inno, thank you so much for being with us. Everybody that attended, I hope that you enjoyed our conversation and that it gave you some hope and gave you some encouragement, gave you some stuff to think about. Oh, The Things We're For is available at your local neighborhood independent bookstore and also available at reachandteach.com. Please get copies of this, give them to everybody you know and love, and spread the word. This is the first in what will be a series of programs that will be coming from Reach and Teach. You might get an email next week about something brand new that's happening with us. Give you a little hint, knock, knock, who's there? By next week, you'll understand what I'm getting at. But I want to thank you, Inno, so much for being here and let you take us out with a last word or two to say goodbye.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Craig and Derek. It's nice to see you again. It's been a while. See you in Richardson and a bunch of people I know in the audience. So I really appreciate this opportunity to share about my new book with you all, and I look forward to a time when we can do this in person.
Exactly. Another dinner together sometime at the co-housing place. Everybody, thank you very much. Please feel free to spread the word. We'll put this video up on YouTube later and share that link with you. And like I said, go out there and get The Things We're For. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend. Bye, everybody.